more of
Advocacy?
a what?
Advocacy?
Yeah, they more assist in the school system. They're not an actual school. There's no teaching going on there. They're just an outside source for the school system, but it's not an actual school.
Okay, thank you. Counselor Bartley?
Yeah, so Attorney Barnes, so that research is based upon, do you have something in writing to that effect, or is that possible, put that in a written form, just so we have that for our jacket?
I can put something in writing. I think the proponent can also provide something in writing. I know he did much further research digging in, but it says out on the sign that it's not a school. It's
Well, and I would have accepted it except we closed the public hearing.
Right.
So I don't know if we can accept it directly from the proponent, but we can certainly take it from a department head,
I'll put something in writing for you. That's fine.
if you would.
That's all.
So that'd be helpful. Thank you.
Counselor Murphy?
Yeah, I did try to get more information, and I'm still confused. But I did get an email from Dr. Reich this morning and I'm going to read it. So, 30 Center Street is run by Center School / School-Based Services. John Foley operates it. And I believe that their diagnostic assessment center is located there. And I know there was something called Student Diagnostics, some kind of services. Students are assessed there who struggle with social and emotional issues, often over a 45-day period. We do have a few students that are there and from Holyoke. There are other students. This is not in his statement, but there are other students there as well. And I tried to find if he can give me some contact information that I would be able to call him, but he wasn't able to get back to me today. So, and again, I'm not real. I certainly is not the kind of school like Morgan School, but I do think it is, and I've had people send me information telling me it is. I think first to 12th grade, and that those students, and I did go by, and there is a door just for students. So I mean, there is some kind of student entryway. So. So again, I don't think it's a pure elementary school or a school in the public school system, but it appears that our public school system does contract with somebody to provide counseling and diagnostics, and I think also some education, but I don't know that. I mean, from what I got from Dr. Reich, I know we have students going there who have social and emotional issues. And again, I did receive concerns from, one of the neighbors asking me to look into that, and that I originally researched LEAP, which is another program there that I think does adult GED things.
Oh, okay.
So I think there's two different services being provided there. And again, I'm still confused as to whether or not, probably from a legal standpoint, it doesn't qualify as a regular educational school. But there are students that are there that are young, and from what I understand, some of them are, certainly have emotional issues, and that was a concern.
Thank you, Counselor Murphy. Anybody else?
I mean, you want a motion?
Well, I'm not seeing any other questions, and I think our department head has answered us on the technical question of if it's technically a school.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to make a comment under discussion, but I'm gonna make a motion to approve the zone change.
Counselor Bartley, you have the floor.
I'll make a motion to approve the zone change. Second. And then just under discussion, to me, this is a touch and go type situation, Madam Chair, only because it's proximate to what could potentially be a school, but I don't know Mr. Foley that well, but I do know that Mr. Foley's a businessman, and I don't know what Mr. Foley's intentions are relative to that facility. Whether Mr. Foley's going to stay there for any duration is an open question. And then what? If he pulls up, if he pulls out, and then what do we have? I think in my mind, when I voted for this, 3 years ago, it was to try to do something to help out, provide investment specifically into South Holyoke and the Springdale section, and of course to the flats. That was really my goal, and I think this goes towards it. That's a fairly dilapidated building. I don't really see much investment coming beyond that, Madam Chair. So as a result, that's why I will vote for this. I mean, pending something, we have now until next Tuesday. If something, we heard from the law department, we're going to get something in writing sent to us, hopefully to the whole city council. That'd be my preference, that everybody in the city council get an email so they can read it over. And then, so based upon that, that's why I would support the, despite the other reservations and the what looks like a spot zoning, despite the other reservations, I would say just for investment purpose alone, we've got to do what we can, and consequently, I'm going to support this. Thank you.
If you don't mind, can you just remind us what the building was used for before?
Bar.
It was a bar.
It was a club,
Lounge.
Franco-American club.
Yes, originally,
Okay.
yes, there you go.
That's right.
Yes, yes.
But it hasn't been in use for some time.
Councilor Murphy.
Yeah, and I've been struggling trying to come up with what I could feel comfortable. When I first heard it, I thought, okay, I'm pretty good with that until I heard the potential of the school issue. But then we got the communication from the planning board that also gave me some, because if in fact we pass this zone change, and if for some reason the intended use is not allowed, then I do have concern that the people that were supporting this now get something right next to their house that is, because now it'll be IG, they'll be in a position where they could have something that would be very disruptive to what they've got. So I'm looking at that as if I were in a perfect world, which obviously I'm not, but if I were, I would love to be able to conditionally do a zone change, and if that doesn't happen, it would revert back. And I know that can't be done, but that's the concern I have. I have the concern about the school. I have the concern about those students that are young and having social issues. I don't know what kind of education they're getting, but I also have concern that if we pass the zone change and then it doesn't happen, anybody else can go there now and do things that would fit into the IG zone. So.
Right, and in this process, we've had a lot of discussion about the project, and as in all zone change public hearings and the like, we have had discussions consistently about the project, and at each and every turn, we are reminded we are only looking at the zone. And once that zone is changed, the use that can be put to the property is consistent with the zone. And so I understand the position of at least a strong majority of the neighbors relative to what they perceive to be the project. But for now, all that's before us is the zone change. If we recommend it and the council passes it, then we will anticipate looking at a special permit request. Councilor Lisi?
Thank you. So I wanted to just make a couple points. So I think that while the building next to 40 Lyman may not be a school, it certainly is some sort of educational facility, and I definitely, understand the concerns about having, even permitting some sort of marijuana establishment. I think it's only 120 or 140 feet away from the educational facility. So I do understand the concerns there. And if it were just a zone change, if we didn't know what the project was, it's a spot zone, and normally it wouldn't fly. And it was actually very surprising to see the level of support from the neighborhood that the project enjoyed, because usually neighbors don't want these other types of uses infringing upon the neighborhood. So really, for me, the best solution would be to allow for special permit for marijuana uses in the DR zone, because that helps you preserve the integrity of the neighborhood while also, by special permit, allowing for these other types of uses. Additionally, if we move forward with the zone change and the applicant doesn't come forward and apply for a special permit, the neighborhood can utilize, and really as counselors, we could utilize, filing either a petition or just filing an order to change the zone. So I just want to make sure that, if we do make the zone change and we don't see an applicant come forward with a special permit request for the business that is currently enjoying the support from the neighborhood, then we can either as counselors file an order or the neighborhood can petition for a zone change and revert back to DR. And that would protect the neighborhood. So I don't think that we're at a total loss here. And I do think that the applicants are interested in moving forward. I hope that if the applicants, if this body in the future is able to create the special permit for marijuana uses in the DR zone, then I would hope that you would leave the door open for us to work with you on the reversion as long as you're able to conduct your business. Yeah. All right, I'm all set. Those are the comments I wanted to make.
Okay, so I would just note that in the case where a zone change was made in the past and the project did not go through, it's an uphill battle to get the zone changed back because the owner has strong standing with that in terms of keeping the zone that they've achieved. And so we didn't really get anywhere with that with the neighborhood, just FYI. But I think we all know what is before us. It is a spot zone situation simply because there is not an abutting property next to it that would relate to it. We have had situations like this historically in the city. And again, there will be a special permit process separate from this zone change should it proceed through the city council. So if everybody's ready, we have the motion, which has been seconded to approve the zone change in this instant, understanding the context as we do. So all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no.
No.
So, and I'm going to go with the ayes on this as much as I don't like the idea of spot zoning. And should I ever approve another one in the future?
Don't
or
hold this one
seek
against
one,
me.
I won't listen to the lecture. But in any event, sometimes there are unusual circumstances, and we have the history that sort of intervenes. So that will be 4 ayes and 1 no, and so the committee is recommending this to the full council at our next meeting. Thank you. So I'll entertain,
Madam Chair, go back to regular order, I guess.
well,
Or do you want to take up number 4?
sure.
Motion to take up, continue to stay out of order and take up agenda item number
Good
4.
night. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Filed by Counselor Bartley that a handicap sign be placed in front of 9 Gate Street for Jeffery Potter.
Yeah, motion to recommend approval, assuming the handicap commission's on board.
And we do, and it was the luck of the timing that our Disabilities Commission was able to go and check the site and recommend for approval of it within this window.
Look at that.
So,
Look at that, isn't that something?
so you have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Oh, and let me just read it that
Yeah, they're okay?
it's the handicap sign to be placed in front of 9 Gate Street for Jeffery Potter.
Yeah, but did you say the handicap commission's good to go with this?
Yes.
I'm sorry.
I have the recommendation,
Oh,
and they
I'm sorry.
recommended
I wasn't-
favorably. Yes,
Good news.
yes.
Okay, thank you.
So
That's that.
we're all set?
All set.
5-0 to recommend approval.
Motion to take up agenda item 2, please. Back to regular order.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Agenda item 2, order that the city council establish a school building study committee to review options and recommend steps for improvements within our city budget. Membership to include but not be limited to the mayor, receiver, 1 school committee member, 1 city council member, 1 small business owner, 1 large business owner, a parent with children in the public schools, a renter, a senior citizen, 1 teacher. membership should represent all the wards of the city to the greatest extent possible. So relative to this order, I just want to give a little bit of background and a little bit of context. So the situation that we're in now, that the vote occurred, is that between January and April, there is an opportunity to present another letter of intent to the MSBA. Prior to that window, we have an opportunity to look over a number of options. I have been provided with a letter that Dr. Reich sent to the MSBA reviewing, I want to say that it's approximately 6 different options. And so my idea is that we could have interested community members that represent at least what is stated on here, and part of our process can be to potentially expand this membership, so that between now and whenever the letter of intent would be submitted, there is an opportunity for dialogue and debate. And I'm not making any presumption that everybody in the room is necessarily going to agree on one answer, and that perhaps the study committee might be recommending 1, 2, 3, or who knows how many things to the building committee to further vet. But the idea is that the information that is out and about and being put forth will be able to have that review, debate from some different perspectives to help inform the discussion going forward. Councilor Bartley.
You're done.
I'm good.
Okay, yeah, so I just,
The document?
I'm looking for the 6-page one.
yeah, so I just want to, I did walk over, and I did get an indication from the people in the gallery that, Madam Chair, that if you would entertain a motion to suspend to allow the public to address for a minute or two, I'll let you ruminate on that. but
No,
I'll-
I'm good
okay.
with that.
Okay, so then I'll just make a quick couple of comments, is that, first of all, I really appreciate this order. I think it's an excellent order. I want to just also, I meant to say this at the full city council meeting the other night, but I forgot. I just really want to give my thanks and appreciation to Devin Sheehan and Dr. Reich for the meeting that was held at, and for the whole committee really, but those two in particular, they really, that was a very difficult meeting, I felt, and it's not easy to chair a meeting like that. I've chaired them here in room 11 on occasion, and I really admire them, both Devin and Dr. Reich, for the work that they did that night, and keeping things sort of moving and keeping people on point. So I meant to say it the other night, Madam Chair, so I appreciate you allowing me to digress. Dr. Reich and I did meet a couple times, and I just want to add, there is a statement of intent that goes out sometime, the way he described it, between January and April, and that's an ever so brief letter that can be really recycled from a prior letter. So Mr. Anderson will send that along. I would assume that the city council would be noticed on that, so we're kept in the loop early on in this process. And then Dr. Reich, the way he described it to me, is that the Mass School Building Authority really would make its intentions known as to whether it accepts or rejects this letter in December of 2020. So just say the letter goes in February or March, and then all that time goes by, and it's not till December, Madam Chair, that we hear from the School Building Authority. I mean, I'm just going to it's just rhetoric right now, but I mean, once that letter goes in, I think that would be the time, if indeed that's what we want to do, that would be the time to sort of ask MSBA, I mean, do you really need an entire calendar year just about to let the city of Holyoke, it's in one of 3 school systems in receivership, to let us know whether or not we can reapply? I mean, I'll defer to the mayor and to the city council president, the receiver, on how they want to how they want to advocate for that, but it would be my hope that we wouldn't have to have all those many months go by. And really, that's it. I mean, I like the wording of this. I think there's a lot of room for flexibility. It brings in, I think, a better cross population in the city of Holyoke. I think that the building committee, as it was, I mean, I think they all did did fine, but I just think we need a broader scope of the city, and I think that's the intent of this order, and I plan to support it. And with that, I don't know if anybody else wants to say something, but I'll happily make a motion to suspend to allow the public to address for a minute or two.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So we're under suspension, and if you can just bear with us for a couple more minutes. I have a copy of a communication from Dr. Reich dated Monday, November 18th, that went to the Massachusetts State Building Authority. And under suspension of rules, if Crystal, I don't see any reason why this wouldn't be a public document. Do you?
Can you just explain what it is that you're holding?
Do you want me to show it to you?
Sure.
Might be easier. Oh, thank you. So, I mean, I don't see why it wouldn't be, but
I mean, if it was submitted to anybody on the city council, it's a public document, so.
okay. So it's my intention to make this, to share this with everybody, but I had just held on to it because I had received it after the meeting and I just wasn't completely sure of the status of it. But anyway, I'll be making the copies available, and just generally can let you know that it's to the MSBA from Dr. Reich, talking about the vote, and then articulating options 1 through 8 that include a variety of approaches to a second plan, which could include no new buildings, could include 1, could include 2 staggered, but in any event, there are a number of options in here, and so I'll make it available to the committee, the council, and should this group get constituted, to the group. All right? Okay, if you folks would like to come forth, if you'll give us your name and address, and make any comments you would like.
Not on, David. We know you know how to use it, though.
Dave Yost from, very loud. Dave Yost from 20 Sydney Avenue, and we're here very much in favor of this order. From my meticulous legal research, I see that the MSBA regulations require certain persons beyond the committee, mayor and so forth. But beyond that, it leaves it to local option. As far as I can see, look into charter, I mean, positions are listed in the charter or mayoral appointment, but beyond that, I don't see any reason why it couldn't come from the council. Mm-hmm. And I mean, we just went through a very divisive experience. People's, time, I think, was used very unproductively. So as, to echo what Councilor Bartley said, if we had a more diverse representation, of all the different components of our community, I think we would have saved a lot of that aggravation and come to a much better, much better way of addressing our school building needs. So again, very much in favor of this, and I'll turn it over to
Thank
Sylvia.
you.
Hello, my name is Sylvia Robello. I want to ask Linda, will you make those copies available to us too?
Yes.
Like the one you said there were 6 proposals? Mm-hmm. That one and the letter that you got from
It's
Zerk?
one and the same.
Oh, okay, good. I was really torn, and I think the whole city was torn with this thing that happened. And I'm sure that whoever was involved, thought that they had done enough publicity out there to get everyone involved, and obviously they didn't. And when finally everyone was on board, it was, it was totally divisive. I mean, we totally divided this city, and I hope that doesn't happen again. I want to be included if there's a committee like Linda is saying. I want to be part of that. I can fill 4 seats because I'm a resident, I'm a senior, I'm a parent that has a child in the public schools, and I'm a teacher. If I can only fill 1 or 2 seats, I would like it to be the teacher seat or a resident seat. I'm not interested in the other 2 so much. But I think it's a good idea that we open it up and we do invite whoever wants to be part of this into this mix so that we have a better say. And then maybe get something approved that everyone is on board with. I agree that maybe 1 school for now, and then a few years down the road we can have another, or just having 6th and 7th and keeping 6 where it is. But I was just to inform you, I was just upstairs in the planning meeting. That was the most boring thing. And I just don't know. I mean, maybe you guys can answer, why is Lynch sold for $250,000? Is that a done deal? Can anyone answer that for me? It's a done deal?
Well, we'd have to ask if the planning board approved the plan. If they did, it's a done deal.
Yeah, well, and that's just the thing. I was there, and I don't think they're capable of doing that.
Well,
They were, but who am I? I am not an expertise in planning, but
and we can't answer your question until the planning board makes their decision.
okay. I just hope it doesn't go through anyway. I'm here. If you guys need me, I'm a phone call away. Thank you.
Thank you. Council
Well, I
Bartley.
just want to point out to the 2 people in the gallery that are thank. Well, first, thanks for coming, but I think not only should Linda get your copy of the letter from Steve Reich, but also you should make sure you should have a copy of her actual order, and you should disseminate that to the extent that you can to your network, or however you want to do that. So, because this would be the basis of, I think, the discussion. So.
It's on the calendar.
I'll defer to you.
The agenda for tonight's on the calendar with all of the orders on the city website, for that part. But this part, I'll get out there. You could give us your email address if you want. That would be helpful.
Well, you know what, we are on a public microphone here, so, I was going to say, if you,
Well,
I was going to say, Mr. Bello, I was going to say, Mr. Yost has certainly my email, and he certainly has Councilor Bacon's email, and perhaps he could be the conduit for your email. Would that be reasonable? Okay, all right, thank you, Dave. If Dave, would you do that?
all right,
Thank you. All right.
okay. Okay, so members of the committee that have, and if the public wants to weigh in, I don't know how much of a chance you've had to think about this, and it wasn't my intention to push this through tonight and get everything buttoned up and answered, because in fairness, I had not asked Ryan to extend like formal invitations out to all the involved parties. I just sort of wanted to get it going and get it out in the open around the process and moving forward. So I would make a point of it before, I don't know if it will be our next meeting or the meeting after that, but to make sure the invitation is extended. But if people had any immediate ideas about other people that should, or categories of people that should be included, I think we could certainly entertain those tonight. Councilor Anderson Burgos?
Thank you. I was thinking maybe in order to, once this committee is set up, in order to get enough people, how would I say, notification or people listening in, radio plasma, asking them, bring them to the table, because it'd probably record it, and then, so that people have a chance to listen at different times. That would be a good idea. You need to,
You have to come to the microphone and,
Can we have a little bit of conversation before we go back to public comment, though?
I don't think it should be
Otherwise, we're
like
gonna keep going back and
such a
forth.
big committee that we can't handle it and it's more like a zoo.
Right.
So maybe if you can like elect or appoint certain people and then we can have an informal meeting with other people. But to have everyone at the table at that time making decisions, it's gonna be a zoo. And nothing is gonna get done.
right, thank you.
Okay.
Counselor Bartley.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't want to monopolize, but I think what we had, well, I think we have a very good template, which to base what looks like either an ordinance or something that, I don't know if you're driving it towards an ordinance, we are an ordinance committee, but I think with the Whiting Street Reservoir Committee, we have a pretty straightforward, easy to read ordinance where we lay out the goals and aspirations and then the membership and then how it meets. I mean,
Right.
we basically did the work. I
Right.
mean, I think you just gotta possibly remove some parts and plug in some other parts, but
Yes.
that way, that might just lay it out very nicely and very neatly. And I just hope that, we can maybe work on that as a committee, and then Councilor Sullivan and I, that's exactly what we did. We worked on it, and then we sent it to Law Department to tighten it up, and the Law Department did just that, and then we brought it here, and we had 90% finished product when we brought it here. So maybe we could do that again.
Did, Counselor Anderson Burgos, did I get your point or anything specific that you wanted to?
yeah, no, I wanted to mention that we should have someone covering the committee
recording
meetings and
it.
recording it, so that way we can, because what Johan's been doing is, when he records, he puts them on his Facebook. And that's a good way to get the word out, to educate the public, maybe if they want to come to the next committee meeting. So we have more involvement, because I feel what happened the last time was, it was sort of not behind closed doors, but it wasn't
Well, no.
the public did not know enough information, and I
But
think.
Juan, so what you want to say in the ordinance then is that meetings shall obviously be public,
Yes,
but they should be,
Recorded.
recorded.
yeah, filmed
And
and
also put on
filmed
the
and
city
recorded.
website.
Right, because
Filmed and recorded.
some people can't come,
Yeah.
Right.
whatever reason,
Well, how
health
many people
reasons.
most people can't come here.
Yeah.
Or go to a meeting at, wherever, some satellite place, but they should be, and if we want to have a meeting to the public, we have Holyoke Media, so if we want to have a meeting at
Holyoke Media,
at
Radio
the-
Plasma, one or the other,
at the Holyoke
Well, or
Senior
both.
Center,
or both, yeah.
There's
but-
no harm.
but you can write it right in the ordinance itself, and that way they're pretty much,
Yeah, I
But
just,
But I agree, I think it should be treated like a committee meeting.
Yeah.
And be up on the website and available.
yeah, because any concerns can be raised ahead of time, as opposed to like last minute.
I'm deferring to the young lady over on
I was
that
gonna
side,
say
and then
age-
the- and
age
then-
before
And then
beauty.
the old man will have.
I was just looking to see who
I'm
was
letting-
up first.
I'm respecting the youth.
I was waiting for the signal.
So
Counselor Lisi.
I actually have a couple questions here, just in terms of the scope and I guess authority of this committee, because the way that the order is written, it says, shall establish a school building study committee to review options. So I'm assuming that you are specifically talking about the options in that letter?
It could include the options in the letter, and it could include other options brought forth by others in the group.
Okay, so then I'm just going to, let's stop there then. So if it's reviewing the options that the receiver has put forth, as however many options there are, I think that's one thing, because the options that they're creating are clearly created by people that understand the educational needs of our district and have some sort of expertise in creating plans and facilities, arrangements to meet the needs of our district. To come up with different options, I think, is starting to venture out of the scope of expertise that this committee would have, at least the way it's constructed on this paper here. So if we're reviewing the options that the receiver has developed, that's one thing. If it's going to be venturing off into other options, I think that is beyond the scope of, again, the expertise in the committee here as is written. Then, in terms of the second half of this order, says recommend steps for improvements within our city budget. I am absolutely on board with that, but I'm not sure if that is specific to the schools. And again, if it is specific to the schools, I'm not sure if the membership of the committee as it's laid out here has the expertise or like, I guess, information that it would need to develop funding mechanisms for the school projects. So I'm a little bit confused about the language there. And then finally, some of the conversations seem to insinuate that this is supposed to be a new sort of school building study committee, as if it were going to have the full authority that the current school building study committee has. And from what I understand, the MSBA has a very specific requirement for what that school building committee should look like. So it requires somebody who is MCPPO certified from the Office of Inspector General, the chief local executive, an administrator or manager. If there is no executive, then there's a school committee member, the superintendent of schools, whoever is in charge of the building maintenance. So, I mean, it goes on and on and on, but the MSBA has a specific guidance about how a school building committee should be structured. So if this committee here is going to be in an advisory capacity and work to amplify the information that we have and to help address some of the outreach issues that we had previously, then I could see that being something that's collaborative and something that is productive. If this is going to try to create a set of options outside of what the superintendent and the educational leaders in our district have created, then I think that is going to be creating a competitive set of options, and it's going to lead to further division in the community. So I just want to make sure that I'm very clear about what I'd be signing off on. And then we could talk about the composition once I understand what the scope and authority that's being envisioned here would be.
Okay, so as I attempted to articulate in introducing my order, this is a study committee, and the purpose of it is to review options and make recommendations to what will be the official building committee when and if the time comes. That time will only be determined after a letter of intent is submitted between the months of January and April of 2020, and after the MSBA agrees to consider it. So no building committee of the official capacity can be appointed by the mayor until such time as the letter of intent is received and accepted, and they're going to move forward. Mm-hmm. So the idea behind this is to have a broad community-based committee that's going to study the issue, and Councilor Bartley's analogy of the reservoir study committee is an apt one, because they're going to only be making recommendations of ideas. They're not going to know or be able to know whether technically, financially, et cetera, if they're doable or not. They're going to be putting forth concepts. And then down the road, the other people who actually have the authority will have to vet and see if they are doable. Mm-hmm. So I would say absolutely yes. I would envision the study committee utilizing the options put forth by Dr. Reich, but I would not preclude that they might come up with some kind of a hybrid between, and I'm making it up, option 2 and option 8, and option 3 and option 7, or that somebody might not be able to create option 9 out of a variety of information that's included from Dr. Reich or from other information that becomes known throughout the process. But clearly, the role of this group will be simply advisory and making recommendations to what will become the decision-making group. My personal vision of this is that a number of the people that will be serving on this group would become members of the official group. Now, I can't say that would happen. I would just say that my vision of it would be that it would happen, so that we would have a broader coalition on that committee than we had the first time around. So.
Right, and I agree that
So, hang on,
Okay,
because right now, we're in discussion in the
Discussion,
committee,
okay.
okay? Counselor Murphy.
Okay, so first of all, I think it's a good order for two reasons. I think we need to keep the idea of making educational improvements active and in front of everybody. I think the other key part that you mentioned here is how do we do it within the city budget, and I think that's crucial, and that's some of the things we've been trying to get in terms of planning for the future, in terms of capital improvements, in terms of where we're going to invest the cannabis funds that might be coming in, all those kind of things that play a role. I understand Councilor Lisi's concerns, but I also think that we need to understand. MSBA might say this is what you need to do, and then basically we ended up. I know there was a lot of things that went in, but ultimately we were given an ultimatum, and we need to be very clear as we decide what we might put forward. That number one, we can afford it. Number two, the specific benefits of that proposal. Another thing that did not go well, and I can remember several of the Charter and Rules Committee meetings where we talked about this, is if in fact we put a plan forward, we need to have a plan already in place as to how that's going to be implemented, both in terms of immediate impact on students being moved out of one building and put into another, and how that's going to go. Like we were told, that some students may be going out of city because we didn't know if we had the capacity. Before we put a proposal out there, we need to know we're going to have these students who are at school X going to school Y if we're doing something with school X, and we're not having certain things happen. And I do think some of the suggestions, and I think, I've looked at the enrollments. I've been pretty active with the absence situation and looking at enrollments, that there are some potentials of having 7th and 8th grade with one building that could end up handling all of our 7th and 8th graders, and potentially, in fact, close the buildings we were trying to close and still be in a position to provide a separation of the oldest of the middle school students into their own campus. There are ideas that need to be discussed. Whether they require a specific building to do that or they require some replan, I do think we need to look at some construction. I don't think there's any question, and I've said that since the beginning. But I think we need to make sure we do the right construction, and we also recognize if this is the first step and we're going to get this going, what's the next step and how quickly can we do that and how can we afford that? And all those, and we need to put that out there so that everybody has a chance to have input. A couple other people, I do think we should have some of our financial officers, our treasurer, our auditor, our assessor, and I also think some school principals should be involved in that, especially school principals who deal with the 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, especially if they're doing it in a campus that's K to 8. That's some of the concerns that have been expressed. So I think there's a lot of things. I think the quality, the purpose of the order is outstanding. I think it's an attempt to reunite the community for one goal that we can all support: improve education for the kids, keep it as affordable as possible, and know that we're going to make progress, not only in the next 2 or 3 years, but in the 5 years after that and the 10 years down the road. It's got to be a long-term plan. It can't be one little thing. And this is going to be the ultimate answer, because we don't have an ultimate answer. But I do compliment you on the order, and I do think that the citizens of Hoyoke should know that at least the city council, and I think you as well, and I think this full council, believes that we need to provide a quality education in the safest environment that we can, and that we are going to make improvements.
Thank you. And to your point relative to affordability and documentation, we really need to see a documented plan in writing relative to the pro forma budget on projected savings and relative to the plan and how it would actually move the children, to your point. But it really needs to be on paper.
Absolutely.
Councilor McGivern has joined us and is recognized for discussion.
Thank you, Councilor Bacon. I think anytime you involve people in an advisory capacity and try to look for the common good, the common compromise that we need to find, regardless of what issue is important to anyone, it's a good thing. And I think if I'm reading into it, what I've heard in the last couple of minutes, that seems to be the intention of the order. So I just have some procedural questions. The makeup of the committee is very important. It doesn't look like you're going to establish it this evening, but obviously that's important. Fair, diverse, and, from all angles that a good, options can be looked at. The committee is going to be established by the city council. And I didn't hear, will the committee be reporting back to the city council, and the city council will decide what to forward?
Well, that's part of what we're working out, and the reference that was made earlier in our discussion was to the reservoir study group,
Yes.
and that we might use that as a template in terms of the general structure and process
I understand.
of how the committee would work.
But if
So-
this is a city council advisory committee, set up by the city council, I think it's important that the city council gets the final say.
Yes, and that the report would come back to the council. I'll note that. Thank you. Councilor Murphy?
And my senior moment, I forgot I meant to mention this. But I do think, and I think Ms. Rebello brought the point up, and I think it's important that we put something together, and if it's too big, we end up unable to deal with the fine points. And there could be a potential here of making several smaller that deal with specific points. This deals with the educational quality standpoint. This deals with the financial standpoint. This deals with the timeline and all those kind of things. And then all of those come back to the full advisory committee and then back to us. And I think that makes it much, just like we do a subcommittee, I think they need to do various aspects of the subcommittee. But with Councilor McGivern, I think we need to know before anything goes to MSBA, we need to know, can we support it? I mean, because if not, we're back in that same situation. And I think that's crucial.
So just so I can recap to make sure I'm getting the point you're making, there would be a core group, and we haven't come up with a magic number, but just throw out for purposes of discussion no more than 20. Like, just throwing it out, not that it's the number, but that group could reach out to areas of expertise relative to a question, a concern, information they want to look further into that would not have to be limited to the formal group, to gain information, input, and knowledge to inform their review of 1 or 8 or 9 options. That's how I'm hearing that. Counselor Lisi?
But I think what I'm hearing Councilor Murphy say is that because we would want financial folks from the city to be on this committee and school principals, we are creating a large group, but they don't have to make all decisions as a large group. They can be divided up into, the steps for financial improvements within our city budget to fund the schools. Like those would be the financial people, and maybe the business and taxpayer association members. I definitely want educators making, educational facility, plans for our children. I don't want a banker making a plan for what the educational facility needs are. But there definitely needs to become a time where the banker and the educators need to have a conversation to figure out, you know, how we pay for these different options. But yeah, as long as this is going to stay in an advisory capacity and, you know, be an opportunity for the public to learn more and understand more, that's fine. I do also, I do caution, I mean, when I looked at that document that was presented to the MSBA, just very briefly, the whole thing is gridded out because we have certain buildings that are sized for certain age groups. And so you can only do certain things in those buildings according to the age group that they're designed for. You can't fit high schoolers in E.N. White, just in terms of like literally their size and what the rooms are going to provide. So I would really like to, in some ways, you know, limit the study to the options that are presented in that grid, because that is the entire scope of the city in terms of the facilities that we have, the facilities that we might build based on what's missing, and how we can kind of play, you know, checkers or chess with the people and the buildings to make it all work, to make it all, it's Tetris, that's what it is actually, making it all work and fit together neatly.
Thank you for your feedback, Councilor Bartley.
Yeah, thanks, Councilor Bay. So first of all, I'm glad you put the word options in there. I would certainly would not want to be limited to a grid developed by, I mean, Steve's Reich did a great job, and he's a great leader as our receiver. But I certainly wouldn't want it to be limited. Furthermore, I would hope this group would be even more than an advisory committee. I hope it becomes a building committee, to be frank with you. I think regardless of what MSBA has laid out, those are rules that they're not imprinted in stone. They can be amended at any time. We are under a special circumstance right now as a school system in receivership. And furthermore, I think if we stick to the same formula, I think we're going to get pretty well the same result, which was frankly a disaster. And it was like I said, it was a pretty damning vote. So my hope is that this order, I think the intent is excellent. It shows really thinking outside the box with a diverse intent in mind and with the best interests of the whole department, of the whole city in the forefront. I think doing the same thing again and again is going to get the same results, which is clearly the definition of insanity. And we don't need to have that again, Madam Chair. But this is such a beginning stage here. I think this has been an excellent conversation with many varied viewpoints. I really want to thank Joe for his comments. I think Joe was really on point with that. I think Joe, if I may direct them to the chair, Joe, what we talked about before you got, it was just that Whiting Street Reservoir Committee, Joe, that we all worked on so hard, and it lays out a fairly, I think it's pretty clear English. It lays out, who's there, what they're about, and who they're reporting to. And I'm hopeful that this group, whatever we're going to call it, we can just base it, the order on that ordinance. And so that'll lead us to where it needs to be. Ultimately, Madam Chair, there's the cards are really with the receiver and with the mayor, and we all know that. But now that we've had the vote that we had November 5th, I'm thinking, at least in my conversation with Steve, which I've had two of them at length since the election, he is really hearing us, and he's more committed than ever, I think, than what I can tell, than really getting as broad a spectrum as possible and to hear as many points of view as he can. Yes, he did, that memo's put together. He helped develop that, but I don't think he's pot committed on all of it. I think he's willing, at least he expressed it to me, he's willing to hear more about it. He just wants to get the ball rolling, get some buildings built, whether, as Mr. Yo said, whether it's building one now. I think Joe said, or Terry said, you know, let's not just think here and now. It's all we heard for the last election. Let's think a little bit down the line, which is what Terry's orders were and my orders were, and Mike's orders were relative to capital planning. And Joe is, how many times has Joe said it? I mean, more than 100 times. I mean, let's figure it out with a plan and you know, start here. And we got to get room one involved. And I know Steve Reich is all in on this. So I think this is a really great order, and I'm behind you to help any way I can.
All right, and thank you for the feedback. And I just want to comment that it's not my intent to limit the ability of the study committee to think about any variety of options, because why not? And so I would be interested for our next meeting if people can give some thought to how large they think the committee should be. If you think we should include the basic required slots that the MSBA prescribes, even though we're not there yet, because I did include key ones that are required by the MSBA, that being the mayor, the receiver, a school committee member, a city council member. I believe a parent with children in the public schools may have been a requirement also, and a teacher, I believe, may have been a requirement on the last building committee. But if I'm missing somebody, I did note down finance.
Local budget official, member of
right,
local finance
so-
committee.
Right, so if that meets all the required positions of the MSBA building committee, then the other people would be additional. And if folks could give some thought to, you know, not to exceed, because there is truth to if you get too big, you just have too much going on in the room. So if we limit it and then people can reach out to others on points of question, then I think you've got a good process going. So if folks can give thought to makeup, members, total, for the next meeting, and any other ideas, members of the public can reach out to your neighbors, friends, and provide feedback to us also between now and the next time that we take it up. And December's gonna get crunchy. There will be a meeting on the 10th that Councilor Bartley will be chairing for me, but then the next Tuesday that we would normally meet on is Christmas Eve. So I don't know what the pleasure of the committee will be on that. Maybe you'll not want to meet on Christmas Eve, I'm thinking. Weren't we here? We were here Christmas Eve one year. What? Doing some
Taxing
budget.
a tax rate.
Tax thing, something.
sit
We
in that
were.
corner. I'll sit
But
in
I'm
that
not,
corner.
I am not advocating to schedule one for that night. But just thinking ahead, if we want to fit in a second meeting in December, otherwise we might be looking at January, which is why I wanted to get started, to get the thinking going.
Yeah.
Time flies.
Yeah,
All right.
I would think if you did it in January, that makes more sense. I think people would then refocus.
time
We're
to
out of the
talk,
holiday
think,
situation.
get through
People
the
are
holidays.
refocused on what's going on and where they can contribute,
together.
where their comments will be respected. And we have it until April, I think you said, right, for a proposal?
Well,
So-
that's the end
Yeah,
of the window.
okay.
The window's January through April, I believe. I'd have to double check that, but,
So if we got a committee together and we did it in January and early February, we could probably have the recommendations to us by mid-February.
now, say that again, please?
If we put an ordinance together, or a committee, however we're gonna do this, and we put that together by early January, then
they
that committee
could move
should be able to meet in January and middle of February, make some recommendations, so that we're, you know, in the first month of the process, already thinking, all right, what do we wanna talk about with MSBA?
Okay.
But I'm just going to interrupt and say, the whole conversation that we were just having was about an SOI needing to be submit between February and April? Is that what I understand?
January and April, whatever.
So, I mean, if you want to influence the SOI, because the SOI is going to be the thing that kind of gets us to the table, and then that we have to work on, don't you want to expedite the process?
I wanna get the process right. And I hear what you're saying, but I think if we try to do everything and then we're trying to get all these recommendations out in January, we're gonna be not dotting that I and not crossing. I'd rather take the time, and whatever we are going to submit SOI, that the community is behind it, the community understands the benefits, the community understands the cost, and the community has said, let's go for it.
Yeah, just of note, Madam Chair, the SOI we sent last time specifically said one building. No doubt about it. Said one building on the SOI. That's in writing. It morphed into something else. So I think the SOI is really just like, you know,
A placeholder.
It's just a pebble in the water, just to let them know.
Right.
That's it.
And one other thing I would note in terms of process, it is critical that we come to understand when that plan can no longer be modified.
Which one?
There was a period of time between the letter of interest and the submission of planning materials to the MSBA where it became not possible to amend it. We do not know where in the process that is, and we need to understand that, because Counselor Murphy and I thought we could still amend it when we were in the public hearing process. No. A school committee member told me at the time we thought we could amend it, he thought it could be amended. So we need to understand when we can no longer amend the plan. And I don't know that answer as we sit here, and I don't know if anybody does, but we do need to know what it is and when it is, so.
Well, that's certainly language you want to have in this ordinance, is up until the point, this committee should meet up until the point when there's a final submission, including no further amendments.
Right.
So that ought to be clear, just like Joe said, and it should be right to
Right.
this council.
Right. Okay, so that will be something that we'll look forward to answers on in between now and our next meeting on this matter, okay?
Want a
So I'd
motion?
entertain a motion to table.
Motion table.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion to adjourn.
I was over.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.